Oblivious people don't realize their own insensitivity. It's quite common to see people who are unaware of others' kindness. But what about a malice? Some people in the world just let sarcasm and a spitefulness slide, thinking that's just how things are. I was surprised when someone pointed this out to me later. It was exactly what I was like. My name is Jessica. My husband, Brian, and I, who work at the same company, just got married at the end of last month. Jessica. The beginning is crucial in marriage. My married friends all mentioned. I never thought I would encounter mother-in-law problems. That's what I thought. But the seeds of conflict were also present at my husband's family home. About 2 weeks after we got married, the summer break arrived. Brian wanted to skip visiting his family this year due to our busy wedding preparations. I persuaded him by saying it's an annual event and managed to get one day for the visit. Judging from their interactions so far, it seemed his mother adored Brian, so she would surely be delighted. Following my friend's advice, the beginning is crucial for the relationship with my mother-in-law. During the summer visit, I planned to showcase myself as a thoughtful daughter-in-law. I titled it, The Thoughtful Daughter-in-Law Plan, and it was set into motion. On the day of the visit, we arrived at my in-laws' house in the afternoon. When we rang the doorbell, "Welcome back, Brian," greeted us with a big smile from my mother-in-law. "Been well?" My father-in-law asked with a grin, appearing shortly after. Actually, I'm not too comfortable around my father-in-law. Sometimes our eyes meet, and I feel like I'm being observed. He seems kind, though. I looked away and watched my mother-in-law, who was happily chatting with Brian. I was thinking how much more pleasant it is to watch someone with an expressive face like hers, when suddenly our eyes met and she gave me a clearly displeased look. That made sense. I had been staring rudely. "Sorry. I was just lost in thought." I apologized. "If you're tired, you didn't have to come back with him," she retorted. "Huh?" But Jessica came for. Brian started to say something, but at the same time, my father-in-law called him over with a "Brian," and Brian went to him with a sigh. Now, it was just the mother-in-law and me. A chance for recovery. Jonah. Is there anything I can help with?" At first, my mother-in-law seemed grumpy, but then she had a sudden idea and asked, "Could you go shopping for something we're running out of?" She wanted herb-infused seasoning. You might not know this, but Brian really likes it. There's a shopping center about 30 minutes from here. Her expression was now cheerful, quite a change from earlier. Understood. I'll go and get it, I replied, readily accepting the task. In fact, I also love the same seasoning. It's not widely popular, so it's not always easy to find, and I had trouble locating it in the same chain of shopping centers before. Worried it might be sold out, I checked nearby import stores and called to confirm they had it in stock. I found a store about 15 minutes away by car and promptly headed out. Returning home in less than an hour, I saw my mother-in-law preparing tea in the kitchen. "Oh, you're back early. Did you not find what you were looking for? Don't say you couldn't buy it because it wasn't available. Do you think that would be acceptable?" Of course, it's unacceptable to return empty-handed. What? She was visibly surprised as our eyes met. "You actually found it?" she asked, shocked, so I explained. "I went to a different store. It's only a 15-minute drive from here. They carry a wide range of products from the same manufacturer. You should definitely check it out. That should be a thoughtful daughter-in-law." I thought I must have impressed her, but she looked like she had just eaten something bitter. Jonah? Did I do something wrong?" I just remembered something else we need. This time, we really have to go to the shopping center." I understood the situation, noticing her expression, while my mother-in-law began writing a shopping list. Then my husband, Brian, appeared and said, "Oh, Jessica, you're back? Going out again? To the shopping center? I'll come too." "Leave the heavy lifting to me," he said. "Brian, I was just preparing tea. Jessica's not a child, she can go alone, can't you? If there's time for tea, why don't you go? Don't make Jessica do it." I insisted Jessica should go. It seemed the mother-in-law had been looking forward to tea time with her son. "Why don't you have tea with Mom?" "I'm fine," I suggested to Brian. But she quickly refused, no, just do what you want. Let's go then. Finally, some alone time. It's like a date. It's a shopping trip. I thought to myself, amused by Brian's cheeky grin. When we returned from shopping, it was already time for dinner. Brian. Your favorite sushi tonight. Mother-in-law announced cheerfully, having dropped her earlier grumpiness. She must be a straightforward and loving person. I ordered from our usual place. Deluxe sushi, just for the family. With a lacquered black sushi container on the table, my father-in-law was already seated, smiling cheerfully. We were invited to sit down, so we took our seats. Brian peeked inside the sushi container and said, "Hey, Mom. One of these is different." True to my husband's observation, one of the sushi containers had different toppings. Egg, shrimp, tuna. It was the standard assortment. Oh, that, my mother-in-law stopped making soup and began arranging the sushi containers. According to her, the sushi restaurant made a mistake in the order. I was surprised by her casual acceptance. Did you ask for a refund? A refund? Well, it's our regular place, so. Even if it's a regular place, they should correct their mistake. It's none of your business. I'll deal with it later, she concluded loudly. A bit irritated, she placed the standard assortment in front of me. Puzzled by this, my husband said, "Hey, why does Jessica get the standard one? Just call the restaurant and have them exchange it." Although he spoke the plain truth, I do prefer the standard assortment because of my simple taste. Jonah, please don't worry about it. It's unfortunate about the restaurant's mistake, but I actually prefer this one. Really? Yeah, I remember you always eating mostly desserts at sushi places. Well, if Jessica's fine with it, I won't say anything. My father-in-law was already munching on his sushi, completely unbothered. I was amazed at his carefree attitude. Despite the restaurant's mistake causing a scene, once the meal was over, my mother-in-law clapped her hands and said, "Let's have dessert." Brian's favorite, cheesecake. I prepared just enough for the family. It's also my favorite. She opened the box and began placing slices on plates. But it seemed there were only 3 pieces for Brian, my father-in-law, and herself. No piece for me? Hey, where's Jessica's piece? That's because I prepared only for the family. What do you mean? Flattering and pretending to like something. There's a limit to being cunning. Sending you to chase for a non-existent item and you still act all composed, even recommending the store to me. Jessica's like this naturally. It's not flattery. She's seriously like this. A rapid-fire argument ensued between mother and son, which I couldn't keep up with. Meanwhile, I noticed my father-in-law smirking at them. Reminds me of the old days. My late mother used to torment my wife from the beginning of our marriage. Only for the family, so the daughter-in-law gets nothing, she'd say. His comment seemed meant only for me. What do you mean? Jessica reminds me of my wife. Always accepting everything positively, always smiling. Back then, she was quiet and always ended up crying when scolded. So, I'm similar to mother-in-law? At least I'm not crying. In our family, a daughter-in-law isn't considered part of the family. She's more like a convenient housekeeper. My wife is just repeating what she experienced in the past with you. His whispered confession and smiling face made me feel nauseous. Ahaha. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The room went silent, and all eyes turned to me. Now I understand this family. Since I'm not considered part of it, I'll file for divorce. The carefree old man was the actual cunning one. What? Came the shocked responses, followed by Brian sighing heavily. Jessica, please don't divorce me. I'll just cut ties with my mother, okay? What? Cut ties with the mother-in-law? Not the father-in-law? What do you mean, Brian? You'd abandon your own mother for this woman? A woman who's nothing but a flatterer, a nasty person. I raised you with care, and you choose her over me. Shocked by her words, I stood there stunned. No matter how positively I tried to hear it, it was criticism against me. The words from my mother-in-law felt less like a loving mother's concern for her son and more like a woman's scorn for infidelity, which sent chills down my spine. My husband, Brian, unfazed, directed a cold gaze at his mother. That's the problem. What? Mom, you don't truly care about me. You're just pushing your feelings onto me. If you really cared about me, you wouldn't treat Jessica, my chosen wife, with such deceit and declare her not part of the family. His words made me recall everything that had happened at my in-laws' house. The deluxe sushi and the cake my mother-in-law ordered, just enough for the family. I had assumed it was a coincidence or a mistake by the restaurant, but it was all her spite. She wanted to show me I wasn't part of the family. Brian, unaware of his father's deceit, must have thought I was suggesting divorce because of his mother's mistreatment. My mother-in-law, who had suffered similar treatment in the past, now doing the same to me, and my father-in-law, who had enjoyed watching and not intervening. What a perfectly matched couple. The more I had wanted to get along, the stronger my sense of betrayal and anger. Brian, don't say that. I just wanted Jessica to be prepared as our daughter-in-law to understand the discipline of our house. It's disgraceful for a husband to defend his wife like this. So, a husband should stay silent when his wife faces unjust treatment? Just become a coward? I was bullied by Grandma too. Treated as less than family. But Dad never said anything. I never got defended, so why does she get kindness from you? My mother-in-law, in her extreme agitation, slammed her anger down on the table. Brian, startled, looked at his father. Mom, you were bullied by Grandma? His father feigned ignorance under Brian's gaze. My mother-in-law's face turned pale. So you did this to Jessica despite your past? Do you lack a human heart? Poor Jessica, sorry, my wife was wrong. My father-in-law's gaze at me screamed, stay silent. He wanted to make his wife the sole villain, to avoid his son's dislike. Huh? Don't joke with me, you terrible old man. I glared at him sharply, and he was taken aback. Quiet and calm daughter-in-law suddenly speaking out was, of course, surprising for him. So, a daughter-in-law is just a housekeeper, right? You whispered that to me, didn't you? Always crying when scolded by your mother, I heard. And you knew all along, yet acted so innocent. What? You deceitful daughter-in-law. You tricked us all along. Why should I not be allowed to enjoy watching those bullying? Blurting out in anger, he looked around in shock, but it was too late. I won't stay silent about such things. I can't endure. I laughed at him, and my mother-in-law turned to me. You understand my feelings, right? You have a kind husband, but I didn't. I had no choice. She tried to justify her treatment of me. No, I don't understand at all. If you feel remorse, why not apologize first? You weren't forced by anyone, were you? A person who willingly does bad things they experience to others, even if the world forgives them, I never will. I responded sternly, then turned to Brian. Cutting ties should be with both parents, not just your mother. Brian sighed deeply and nodded, of course. After that, Brian cut ties with his parents. We changed our contact information immediately, but my mother-in-law, thinking an apology would fix everything, came to our house several times. My father-in-law, due to the past I revealed, was in a sort of domestic separation. He loved Brian too, but blamed me, saying, it's your fault for everything. Apparently my mother-in-law kept digging up the past, arguing with him, it's your fault for not defending me, and they constantly fought. They tried to appeal to us, but I coldly turned them away, warning, next time, I'll call the police. We moved a few months later, so I don't know what happened afterward. My mother-in-law, abandoned by her son, lost her spirit and declared she would stop taking care of my father-in-law, likely leaving the house in chaos. This incident made me realize my own insensitivity. I don't know if I can improve, but I'll try to live more attentively.